Hi there, I'm Nina Matei and I selected the April 1st, 1946 Aleutian Island tsunami, which I had heard about before and was interested to know more about. This tsunami began in the Aleutians near Alaska and it spread across the Pacific through the Marquesas. The April 1st, 1946 Eastern Aleutian earthquake was the beginning of Hawaii's most destructive tsunami, which killed 159 people and flooded all of the Hawaiian Islands. In Hilo, 96 people died, mostly in their homes when the earthquake struck at about 6:45 a.m. Actually, it was the tsunami that struck. The waves on the north shore of Molokai reached 54 feet. An hour earlier, and even more people would have been sleeping. An hour later, and more people would have been in the danger zone just beginning their workday. The U.S. Geological Survey lists the initial earthquake as an 8.1, and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center estimates that it reached 8.6, according to Lopez and Okel in 2006. So stage 1 is concerned with preparedness and warning. Planning for tsunamis includes redundant alert and notification systems for responders, regular communication with residents in threatened areas, supportive business continuity, and preparing shelters and humanitarian aid ahead of time. Because the coast is most in danger, first priority is given to evacuation, transportation, and infrastructure. In the 1946 tsunami, even though radio and telephone systems were robust enough, Hawaiian residents were not warned. With 5 hours of advanced warning, the Hawaiian governor and local officials had enough time to at least move the most at-risk residents out of harm's way. Because Hawaiian authorities did not provide that warning, dozens of people were injured and killed. If this happened today, not only would the officials be culpable, but their agencies would be held accountable also. The current culture of preparedness and immediate response requires more coordination and preparation, but it also saves lives and property and reduces unnecessary injuries. Because of extensive damage caused by this tsunami, more responders and the National Guard were needed for search and rescue and recovery operations. Shelters, temporary housing, and humanitarian aid were also pulled together in the aftermath, instead of being ready to receive evacuees ahead of time. In hurricanes, another natural threat that provides early warning, evacuation shelters are set up before severe weather approaches, so those in harm's way and those with special health and medical needs can be safely evacuated. The Center for Oral History at the University of Hawaii has preserved the experiences of survivors of the 1946 tsunami, which inundated the streets and homes, businesses of the islands. And like so many other tsunamis, victims were swept out to sea and others were killed by the force of the waves and the debris that was washed through the waves. So one of the survivors was James U.C. Lowe, and he talks about his experience. He says, "When I looked up, I couldn't believe my eyes because there was this huge, huge wave, nothing that I've ever seen in my life. It was like a wall of water that was rising in the bay, and it was just rolling in towards the building. By the time I got into that driveway of the gas station, the water had already reached me and I was still sitting in the car. So I was neck deep in water and half petrified because I didn't know what to do. And I sat there for a moment and then I felt the car being dragged out. It kind of woke me up, so I immediately jumped out of the car through the window." That's where Mr. Lowe ends his description of his experiences. So here in stage 2, where we're looking at response and recovery. With 5 hours of warning, the search and rescue teams can be mobilized and staged, resources can be stockpiled in safe areas, and medical teams and supplies can be pre-positioned at facilities away from the danger zone. Many of Florida's hospitals are located in coastal areas and areas at risk for storm surge also. One example is Tampa General, which is a level 1 trauma center, and it's actually located on an island in Tampa Bay, so it's at severe risk from all sorts of weather-related dangers. And although hurricanes are one of Florida's predominant threats, the planning shares some similarities with tsunami planning. Planning for these vulnerabilities ahead of time is the responsibility of facilities, local emergency managers, and local and state agencies responsible for the related emergency support functions. When local and state emergency managers and agencies at all levels must have coordination, they must do their assessments together, share their intelligence to ensure a common operating picture for all response and support agencies. Public alerts and mass communication messages also rely on accurate and timely situational updates. And then the Unified Command and Joint Information Systems also support these communication priorities and help to eliminate conflicting and incomplete public information. As response and recovery continues, state and local officials will continue to rely on mutual aid and a steady stream of supply of heavy equipment and fuel, workers and rescuers to help restore infrastructure, restart commerce, and help residents to regain their normal routines. So the lessons learned that I took away from this particular case study, according to the University of Hawaii's Oral History Center, because the 1946 tsunami killed almost 160 people and caused tens of millions in damage, the tsunami warning system was developed for the Pacific, and it has successfully saved lives and property, especially in 1948, 1952, and 1957. The early warning system, along with redundant public communication systems, like the Code Red system we have here, and social media are capable of providing timely and early warning to targeted segments of the population or to all of the population. But one of the things that's important to remember is complacency. And complacency led Waikiki residents to disregard tsunami warnings and to return to their homes and businesses on May 23, 1960. The tsunami that struck Kamehameha Avenue Business District at about 1 a.m. Florida faces similar complacency from hurricane threats. Our state hasn't suffered a significant hurricane threat in more than 10 years, and emergency managers worry that residents are becoming complacent or have no experience preparing for a hurricane. After the 1960 tsunami, the Hawaiian Islands chose to mitigate against future losses and eliminate some of those dangerous areas. Residents and businesses were relocated. Around the Hilo Bayfront, areas were cleared to make way for open spaces, beaches, golf courses, and recreation areas. Long-term risks can be reduced through mitigation projects, changes in building and zoning codes, and altering public perceptions. Mitigation can also include the purchase and demolition of repetitive loss structures. Those are buildings and residences which are located in danger-prone areas and which have suffered multiple incidents of flooding or other damage by natural disasters. So by purchasing these properties and turning the land back into green space, emergency managers can help to remove vulnerable structures and to actually preempt the destruction of property, injuries, and loss of life when natural disasters strike. By returning their at-risk areas to open space, Hilo took dramatic and long-lasting mitigation action. The mitigation that they took in the early warning systems are what I think the most far-reaching efforts that the Hawaiian Islands undertook to reduce their vulnerabilities. And then here are a few of the references that I used to pull together this particular critique of the case study. I hope you enjoyed the critique, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for listening.